A haunting but mesmerizing scene from the wildfires in Sonoma County. A man came across this tree burning from the inside out. Matthew McDermott was driving around looking for escape routes as multiple fires closed in on the area he was in. The tree appears to be hollowed out by embers and flames.
Directed energy weapons, also known as DEWs, are weapons that deploy a highly focused energy beam, including lasers, microwaves, and particle beams. After decades of research in the United States, defense contractors announced back in 2015 that these systems are expected to come online by 2020, and are currently announcing that they are ready to deploy in the field. Russia, China, India, and the UK are developing directed energy weapons as well. And Iran has had them in use since at least 2013. In 2019, Turkey was the first to officially deploy this technology in combat, when they claimed to have shot down a Chinese-made drone supplied to the Libyan National Army. On September 16th, Defense Secretary Mark Esper announced that China and Russia have already weaponized satellites with directed energy weapons.
Meanwhile, in space, Moscow and Beijing have turned a once peaceful arena into a warfighting domain. They have weaponized space through killer satellites, directed energy weapons, and more, in an effort to exploit our systems and chip away at our military advantage.
And for the past few years, many have wondered if these advanced weapon systems have anything to do with the unprecedented fires we have seen in the past few years. Laser-based weapons are able to destroy the target with external heat, and microwave weapons are designed to penetrate the target through external antennas and sensors and ignite the internal electronics, destroying them from the inside out. This could explain how thousands of homes have rapidly burned into their own footprint, while the trees surrounding them survive. And it could explain the several cars we have seen utterly destroyed, with temperatures hot enough to liquefy glass and metal. Michael Janich, host of the YouTube Dutch Sense channel, has been researching the Earth's seismic activity for the past 10 years. During the past few weeks, he has discovered satellite imagery that show an equal distance spread of fires, all starting within the same 4 hours.
4 hours? We've got ourselves an equal distance spread of fires. Here, 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 and here. So, what could cause an equal distance spread of fires? Well, only two things, Mother Nature or man, right? There's no storm in the area. You can't blame a storm. So, what could cause equal distance spaced fires to spread out across, what do you think that is, 1/3 of Idaho?
And he also discovered what looks to be a beam of light that can be seen in the infrared spectrum, like a microwave. On September 8th, a beam of light can be seen directed to the Dolan Fire of California. The beam appears to excite the heat signature of the fire as it is held on target for over 2 hours.
Right before dawn, watch that. This is yesterday, going into this morning. This is in California, the beam coming from space up above Oregon, or somewhere in between this and Oregon. And as it's going through, see how it excites? As the beam is spreading, look how it excites. It's no doubt about it. And the beam spreads first. Look, beam spreads first. It goes from a tiny, little, tight beam to a wide beam. Then the fire spreads to a wide fire.
The next day, a beam of light is seen directed at and exciting the heat signature of the Holiday Farm Fire in Oregon for over an hour.
Here it is now, and it's two of them, and it's only going to one fire, a different fire, and it's moving. Okay, it's moving, there's clouds going through it, which rules out it being an artifact. The clouds are passing through and interfering with the beam.
Meanwhile, in space, Moscow and Beijing have turned a once peaceful arena into a warfighting domain. They have weaponized space through killer satellites, directed energy weapons, and more, in an effort to exploit our systems and chip away at our military advantage.
The timing of this public admission is interesting. These weapons of the future are now officially being deployed. Are we currently being attacked with directed energy weapons? And if so, by who?
Lockheed Martin produces systems that do everything from detect the threats, to identify the threats, determine whether it's a threat to the aircraft, and then employs the appropriate weapon, in this case, a laser weapon system.
What we're hearing from our customers is that they need a layered, multi-domain defensive approach that can be integrated across platforms to neutralize these threats across all those domains. Imagine an aircraft equipped with a laser system with the capability to be able to neutralize a threat at the speed of a lightning strike, the precision of a surgical scalpel, with the magazine to deal with a swarm, and with the scalable effect to be able to address that threat, providing an effect all the way the one end from simply deterring it for a short period of time, all the way up to completely neutralizing and defeating that threat.
We were able to integrate our laser weapon system, Athena, into the classified C2 network and receive cues from the radar on the range in order to execute the full kill chain.
The Helios laser weapon system builds on 40 years of combat system engineering and radar excellence. That is a fundamental change for laser weapon systems, which here to date have been prototypes added to a ship. Helios will be integrated into the ship.
So what's exciting about this technology is that it's scalable. It's lived in the laboratory for many years, but has finally reached the power levels and the effectiveness to allow it to be used on the battlefield. As an example, today's laser weapon systems can be used to defeat rockets, artillery, mortars, and even small UAVs. And as that technology and capability scales, the effectiveness scales with it. We'll be to the point here shortly where we'll be able to defend aircraft against incoming missiles and even reach out over long distances and destroy ballistic missile threats.
Laser weapon systems are earning their way onto the battlefield. Lockheed Martin advancements in the fundamental subsystems, be it beam control, high energy laser, beam direction, power and thermal, is bringing a system-of-system approach to our customers' most challenging problem. Lockheed Martin can bring that end-to-end capability into the theater for the life of our platforms and help defend the brave women and men who boldly go in harm's way to defend our freedoms.
This laser weapon can strike targets such as drones, rockets, and mortars, and can do so for a fraction of the price of other missile-powered defense systems. The Iron Beam is an experimental project built by Israel. It could be used in conjunction with the Iron Dome, which launches rockets and is considered one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world.
מערכת הלייזר של רפאל הוא שובר שוויון אסטרטגי למדינת ישראל וגם בעולם.
Israel says the Iron Beam could enhance its protection against threats from Iran's allies in Lebanon and Gaza. But some defense experts say the technology has several weaknesses, including its short range. To perfect the system, Israel is in talks with the US about cooperating on the technology. Here's how the laser beam system works and why some military analysts say American expertise could enhance it. The Iron Beam is composed of a laser gun located on this swiveling unit, a surveillance system that tracks incoming threats, and a command center where operators give directions. Israeli officials say the laser gun fires a beam that uses 100 kilowatts of power. That's around 100 times the typical electrical power that a household in the US uses. Here's what it looks like in action. This footage from the Israeli Defense Ministry shows the laser striking down a rocket. Israel's goal is to integrate this weapon into its arsenal and also save some money. That's according to military analysts who say the laser would allow the country's army to reduce its reliance on the more expensive Iron Dome. One interceptor missile fired from the Iron Dome can cost $50,000 or more. In contrast, Israel's departing Prime Minister Naftali Bennett said the Iron Beam could do the same thing for as little as $2.
I'd say there are two advantages. One, the cost per kill, the recurrent is low. And the second is that there is no ammunition. You save all this train of production and logistics.
That's Uzi Rubin, a defense engineer and military analyst. Years ago, he developed earlier defense systems for Israel. He says the Iron Beam, despite all its advantages, has a lot of issues to overcome.
This is not a silver bullet, as it sounds, with disadvantage. One is a short range, the other is the sensitivity to weather, and the third is the low kill rate.
Let's start with the weather. The issue is that the system's sensors can be hampered in rainy and cloudy conditions. That means the Iron Beam may not be operational in Israel in colder months such as November and December, according to Rubin. If the weather prevents it from working, Israel's defense ministry says the Iron Dome could kick in. Another vulnerability is said to be the range. The beam loses power as it travels through the air, making its impact on the target less powerful. It's known as the bloom effect.
When it hits the air, it starts blooming, the beam widens up. And after a while, it's so diluted that it doesn't have an effect.
And then there's the speed at which it can take down objects. The period of dwell time before the laser damages its target makes it slower than the Iron Dome.
When you push the button, your beam touches the rocket at the speed of light. But then it has to keep pumping energy into the rocket until it melts or explodes or something.
That process could take a few seconds and hamper its ability to combat multiple incoming rockets, Rubin says. On its own, the system could struggle to counter strikes similar to those seen in this video footage, where rockets are fired from position in Gaza City towards Israel in May of 2021. Still, Israeli officials said the Iron Beam could be deployed early next year. Israel's project comes amid a global wave of interest in laser-powered weapons. Countries such as the US, Russia, and China all claim to be working on the technology, which some defense experts say could be a key component in future warfare. The Pentagon is working with major defense contractors and testing advanced systems based on similar technology to Israel. And some US tools are estimated to be capable of firing a 300 kilowatt laser, which is more powerful than the Iron Beams. The more kilowatts of power the system has, the farther the laser can strike targets, although laser makers in the US and Israel told WSJ that the range of laser weapons can vary widely, also depending on the type of target. The Iron Beam is designed to detect small targets up to 12.4 miles away, according to Israel. Analyst Uzi Rubin estimated that American lasers could strike twice as far as Israel's. That's still much lower than the Iron Dome, which can hit rockets at a distance of up to 43 miles.
The range is limited. It's more limited than the range of interceptor weapon, even a short-range interceptor weapon.
Because of all those limitations, security analysts say Israel is seeking support from the U.S. to enhance the weapon. President Biden was showcased the Iron Beam during a state visit to Israel and signaled U.S. support for the tool.
We have reaffirmed the unshakable commitment of the United States to Israel's security, including partnering with Israel on the most cutting-edge defense systems in the world, including the U.S. support for the Iron Dome and Israel's new laser-enabled system called the Iron Beam.
Congress is moving ahead with plans to send Israel another $1 billion to the Iron Dome, which the U.S. Army has also been testing in some military bases. Now, any new cooperation on the Iron Beam could accelerate the process of making laser weapons a reality on the battlefield.
Directed energy weapons like high-energy lasers could be a game changer in future wars, but they've been in development for decades, and the DoD has yet to field these weapons at scale. Mark Gunzinger is a director at the Mitchell Institute and a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, so what kind of target would would a directed energy weapon be used against? And to be clear, we're talking about laser, we're not talking about high-powered microwave.
Right. Lasers that exist today are capable against rockets, artillery, mortars, and increasingly they're becoming capable against higher-end threats like cruise missiles, depending on the geometry of a shot. If you can get a side shot on a cruise missile and you get a burn-through on its thin skin, then that would be an effective kill.
All right, so explain a little bit how these weapons actually work.
Yeah, there's really two kinds of laser technologies right now. Distributed gain, which is a series of slabs, and you beam energy into one and hit them serially, and it amplifies until you have a coherent beam of laser energy coming out the other end. And then you have spectral beam combination, which is a bunch of fiber lasers, individual lasers, kind of look like communications laser fibers. And they're spectrally combined to form, again, a coherent beam of energy that can hit a target at short to medium ranges.
So they use electricity. So where do they get their power source?
Yes. Well, I'll tell you that the Army is scheduled to deploy a 300 kilowatt laser this November to a range to test it, and it'll be all contained on an Oshkosh heavy truck with a generator to provide the power source, the cooling, the laser, and the beam director, all contained, forming a highly mobile package that can emit a beam of energy of 300 kilowatts, which would be good for many different kinds of cruise missiles, as well as the other threats that I mentioned.
So let's talk about the benefits, because one big benefit is you don't need to reload. There's no supply chain for ammunition.
That's absolutely correct, and that's critical because our Air Force is, and our Marine Corps, and of course the Army is developing concepts for conducting highly distributed operations to reduce their vulnerability to attack by China and Russia and other adversaries. So if you're highly mobile, you move your basing your posture around frequently, you need mobile defenses. You need to reduce the logistics to support those kinds of defenses, and that's exactly what directed energy weapons do. You don't need to reload them with large missiles like you would a Patriot missile battery. There's one other advantage. These weapons are electrically powered, so they're cheap. A laser shot might cost the price of you and I going to Starbucks for coffee. Compared
Nothing
to
in DoD is that cheap.
That's true, but compared to a $4.3 million Patriot missile, which doesn't make sense against some of the threats that we would have to use them against today, since we don't have operational lasers.
All right, well, let's talk about the range, though, because doesn't it become more expensive as you get farther and you need more energy?
Yes, it does, but you also need better beam quality of lasers, too. It's not just the energy output, but the beam quality. And lasers are going to be best at short to medium range kills, frankly. High-powered microwave weapons, which we just barely touched on, they're medium to longer range. But the fact is, you need a combination of kinetic and non-kinetic, including directed energy weapons, to handle the thousands of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, swarming UAVs, and other threats that our military faces. You need both.
What about bad weather? Because when you're talking about laser, it's not going to work as well if there's a storm, if it's cloudy. How does that work?
And that gets right back to the point it is made. You need both because laser beams can be attenuated by weather. High-power microwaves, not so much. Again, it's the combination of both that you need to give our forces the kind of defensive capacity they need to survive in contested areas.
And there was the Air Force Research Lab did run a war game a couple of months ago of that kind of hybrid between the high-directed energy weapons and the kinetic weapons.
That's exactly right. That and many other war games, some of which I've led, have shown it's the combination of the two. The ability to have fire control systems to integrate both kinetic defenses like Patriots, as I've mentioned, THAADs, and even lower-cost kinetic interceptors with directed energy systems to choose the best tool to use against that threat that's inbound.
What do we know about the directed energy capabilities of China and of Russia?
They are in full pursuit of those technologies, and in some cases we may not be the first mover, similar to what we see in hypersonic weapons.
Give me an idea of the timeline. When are we going to actually see these being deployed in the field and used?
Now that's the really exciting part. The word for the last 30 years has been directed energies are always 10 years out. 5 years from now, they're 10 years out. Well, guess what? Over the last 6 years, we are now at 60 kilowatt lasers. And we're deploying a 300 kilowatt laser this November, as I mentioned, for testing. In another 2 years, we could be at fielding those 300 kilowatt lasers, maybe even 500. And in 5 to 6 years, we'll be hitting megawatt class lasers. And those will be effective against some kinds of ballistic missiles, including possibly anti-ship ballistic missiles that China fielded to attack our fleet.
Do you think that the Defense Department is fully behind this and that the funding reflects that?
I think the funding is beginning to reflect that. Over the years, I've seen a constant level of funding somewhere between $500 and $6 million per year going into research and development for all kinds of directed energy capabilities. Now, that has been almost doubled in the last budget, but still, if you think about hypersonic weapons, that last budget was about $3.8 billion for hypersonic weapons. So directed energy weapon research, development, and some acquisition is still about a third of that.
All right. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming in. We'll see where this goes.